So in the previous video we created a sample application, and now we are going to see how we can add a global CSS style. So what is a global CSS style? So let's say I'm going to log in. So let's take our view. If I go to my sample application, if I open my view that we created earlier, you can see that here I have a rich text, and I can add a CSS class, and I can have a container, and in this container I could add another rich text, and I wish I had a container with colors. So if you look at the container, you can see that we have a CSS class. So by default we have a free CSS class, so to add a border, for example, but it's pretty crude, right? So what we want here is to find a way to add some colors. For that we need to create a CSS class and create a CSS class that is global. So the easy way to do that is to go inside our coded application and going inside the styles folder. So here we have a default out of the box SCSS file, which by default doesn't contain anything, and that's a preferred way to put global CSS style. But because the global CSS style is by essence global, so that means that you need to be careful not to, for example, override BMC styles or other developer styles. So we have some prerequisites, or at least best practices, on how to name the global CSS classes. So usually it's using your bundle name and what it does. So for example, here it would become example sample app, and here I would put red container. Then, well, I want a red border, for example. So I want red border, 1 pixel, solid, and here I could put red. But so one thing that is interesting is if you want to match the color scheme that BMC is using, you can import some CSS style and colors that we are using, even internally, also from adapt that I was talking earlier. So for that you need to import a specific file which should be inside styles and variable. And this file actually contains a lot of default colors that adapt is providing. So we are just going to import it. So it's going to be at import, and we are just going to reference. So it's going to be styles and variables. So now what I can do is, let's say that I want to create a color that is actually something that BMC is using. For example, we might not be using a red color. So BMC red, I would put, for example, $gray. Here you can see that everything is coming from variable CSS. So if I take gray 300, and if I control click on it, here you can see all the colors, I mean some of the colors that BMC is using. So you have the different shade of gray, you have the different shade of here, for example, we have color critical instead of red, and color critical is, you know, it's not exactly right, it's like a BMC, right? So technically you could do something like this and use color critical instead. But for the sake of example, we'll just use red. So we do that. We are going to use a background color. What do we have? We have, well, it's going to be very ugly, but that's not really a problem. So here we are going to, we have our CSS class here, and we want to apply this class to the container. So we are going to take this class name, go back in Innovation Studio in the View Designer, check we are in the container, and we just put the class, so without the first dot, and type enter, and the class will be applied. So of course, right now nothing is working because, I mean, everything is local, right? So we have to push it in Innovation Studio. So we go back here and we are going to type our command, which is maven clean install -p export -p deploy. So we are going to run this command to update our bundle in Innovation Studio. So I'm going to trigger this command and I'm going to pause the video until it's actually deployed on the server. Okay, so now you can see that the code has been deployed. So I'm going to preview the view again, and you can see that the style has been applied. So you can see that the border color is red and the inside is, I don't know, something reddish. So it's very easy to do, and now we are going to see how it works behind the scene, because it could be interesting to know. So if we go in the dist folder, which is the folder that will contain our JS and CSS code, you can see that you have some interesting files. So we have this file, which is JavaScript. So now we don't really have anything interesting. And we have the CSS file. And this CSS file contains the class we just created. So how does it do that? So in our file, in the main file, which is angular.json, we have in architect different entries, different sections. And one of them is actually styles. So as you can see here, what it does is it's taking as input the file that we were working on, and it's going to create a file come example sampleapp.css, which is this one. So it's going to minify it and put it inside here, which also means that if you want to put styles into different style sheets, like you could do so. So you could do something like global styles CSS. So same thing, let's copy those classes real quick, and here it's going to be a blue container. Here it's going to be blue. Let's try to select something as ugly as we did before. Light sky blue. So now we need to reference this file inside of angular.json, because if we are triggering the build, the system doesn't know this file. So what we can do is something like this. So we are going to duplicate the entry that we have here, and here we are going to take this file. So I'm going to copy the file name, put it here. So now I'm referencing both those files, and it's very important that you do not remove this entry. It's very important that you add another one. So here I'm taking this file, and the bundle name should be identical. So this way both classes would be inside of here, inside this file. It's very important. So it will minify both files and put it inside one. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the class name for the blue container. I'm going to, do I have another container? No. I'm going to put another container. I'm going to put here, I was told I was feeling blue. And I'm going to select the container. I'm going to apply the blue container class this time. I'm going to save. I'm going to refresh my preview view. So for now, of course, we don't have anything. So Let's trigger the build and let's check that everything is working as we think it should. So I'm going to pause the video again and I'll see you after the build. So we deployed the application, so let's check really quick that in the build file we have both our classes, and we do. So now if we go here and we refresh, we should see the blue container. So it has this blue background, blue background and blue border. So here is you can apply custom styles, and it's very important to put it here in those files, because with Angular what's going to happen is if you create a class inside a component, and that we'll see later, Angular automatically is going to change the class name so it doesn't bleed to other objects, for example. So that's pretty much the only way you could do that, and it's very convenient.